Welcome to Dogs and Gooses, where, as my associate Starks always says, where the dogs are dirty and the goose is silly. I have with me today, as always, my co-host, Starks, the silly goose.
I'm in fact here. Yes, it is me.
And this is me, Williams, the dirty dog, and a special guest today, the unofficial president, the official president of our unofficial fan club, Joseph.
Hello, and if you want to join the unofficial fan club, just get in contact with me. If you're a true fan, you'll know how to do that.
Yeah. It's a very official process for an unofficial thing.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I don't know if I know how to contact you, which makes me wonder if I'm a true fan, Joseph.
Well, I guess you're not then. You're just the host, not really a fan.
I'm just a fair weather fan.
Of your own podcast. I don't know how that makes you feel, but it shouldn't be good.
It doesn't make me feel good, that's for darn sure.
Well, all right. Joseph here is a co-worker of mine. We work together doing our custodial job, where we've been stripping floors lately, waxing floors, general cleaning, just working our hearts out.
Causing havoc in the building and to the just general public.
As much as possible, which is actually quite a bit. So, some other things about Joseph. Besides being a solid individual, he is from Georgia. How many siblings do you have, Joseph?
I have 4 siblings, 3 older brothers and 1 younger sister.
All right, so you're
Very nice.
So you were the youngest for a little while.
Yes, for a couple years I was the youngest there. Then we had the baby girl of the family, and she just absolutely loves not having a sister and having 4 older brothers.
Oh, I bet it's a blast for
Getting
her.
all the love in the family.
Yeah, love. That's what we call it.
You know, it always goes one way or the other with the youngest, especially if they're a girl. They either get all the bullying or all of the love. Sometimes both.
I think it's a little bit of both in this scenario.
And Laura, my youngest sister, who's also our biggest fan.
Oh, yeah. Well, but she hasn't even joined
she's
the
not
fan
the
club, so I don't know if
official-
she's even the biggest
That's true.
fan. You know what I'm
She
saying?
needs to consult with Joseph
Yeah,
if she's the biggest fan.
she'll be in touch after this episode,
Oh, I'm
probably,
sure.
and we'll
I'm
work
sure.
something out.
That's fair. She definitely gets all the love and not as much of the picking on.
And Joseph is also what they call a DM. Now, for the layman, that means dungeon master. No, he doesn't torture people.
Whoa.
Well,
oh,
not
Joseph?
in the conventional way, actually, but
Oh, no.
in a sense.
I'm a DM for Dungeons and Dragons, the game, and sometimes the players will get somewhat upset just because the nature of the game.
Did you torture them? Is that, or do they just get upset randomly with no anything like?
Well, part of a fun game is hardship. And, you can't just always be easy, and sometimes it's a bit hard, and players might get upset at that. But,
I just realized something about my life. God's been thinking I've been wanting a fun game.
Oh, well, why don't you tell him, Williams? That's not what you're after.
All right.
So I just finished doing a session of D&D about an hour ago, so my voice might be a little rough, but here to record the greatest episode so far.
Oh, 100%.
I have a feeling that's going to be the title.
For the record, Joseph, your voice sounds silky smooth.
Well, thank you.
Just
Starks.
so you know.
Thank you.
Very good. Joseph, anything else you want to say? Or
Not really. I'm a student at BYU, hoping to get into the information systems program, but I'm just a freshman right now, so I have to wait before I apply for that program.
But the way it's going, it looks like he's doing pretty good.
Yeah, I guess it is, but we'll see how it goes.
I'll be honest, I met Joseph about 20, 30 minutes ago, but let me tell you, he's going places.
Well, thank you.
I know talent when I see it, and you've got it.
Yeah, I try my best, just try to live life one day at a time, and whatever happens, happens. That's my catchphrase.
Attaboy.
Fantastic. With that, we will turn the time over to Starks for our news segment.
Okay, first off, as all of you likely noticed, we now have an intro song and an outro song. That's our biggest piece of news. Like, we have some other news that's going to come after this. It's all trivial. We all have an intro song and an outro song, which we did not hear because that's not how studio music works. They don't play it for us. You guys are the ones that get that treat. It's a little sad.
Yeah,
But
you don't know how badly I wanted to hear it. Starting out.
Exactly the same here. I'm very hurt.
Joseph was hurt. He was telling me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hit me,
right in the feels.
right in the feels.
Yeah. I mean, technically, we could have played it at the start just because we could. But that would be so cheap, so weak compared to the genuine thing, But our intro and outro song were composed for us, or made for us, or whatever the word you fancy music people use, by Trevor Boardman, good friend of mine, jack of all trades, as they say. He's also helped us a lot with our audio and with a number of other things. Someone I work closely with, and he's a good friend of ours. So, special thanks to Trevor. The intro and outro sound great, and we feel like they kind of embody the general feel of this podcast.
Yeah, I was super impressed with them myself.
Mm-hmm. We'll show them to you afterwards, Joseph.
All right.
We should have had that plan where you listened to it before, but you're just gonna have to wait.
Well,
Sorry.
I actually already heard the song a day or two ago.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh,
showed it to me at work.
So, are you as excited as we are?
Oh, the song was playing in my head already when I was, starting the podcast.
Yeah, it hasn't left my head yet.
It's a curse.
Yeah. So, on less important news than Trevor being an absolute boss of a man, I have essentially three things. First off, the gopher, Phil or some such, he said that we about to have spring, boys. And women as
Wait
well.
a minute. That
Spring's
was
not only for boys.
Was that yesterday?
I don't know. It was sometime between our last podcast and this podcast. So,
man,
we're getting ready for spring. Honestly, it hasn't been that cold of a winter.
You can tell that at my house we don't celebrate Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, you should feel ashamed of yourself, Williams.
Yeah.
Also, I have right in front of me this thing that says something Phil, but I don't know how to read that. Punxsutawney Phil predicts an early spring at Groundhog Day festivities. So that's one of our next most important news pieces of the week. And then I'm honestly just going to read the titles because I didn't want to read into the articles on these ones. We'll get into the podcast and the interesting stuff. But this one says, man found a Cold War era missile in his garage. So that's something.
I'm starting to notice a little bit of a theme.
Yeah.
Last podcast we talked about a grenade being found in the walls when remodeling a bathroom. We just learned about a missile being discovered in a garage.
I mean, finding a grenade in the wall is one thing. Whoever built the wall put it there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But how does a missile end up in your garage without you knowing?
That's true.
Well, he probably knew. He was probably saving it for a rainy day.
He's like, this will make a great news article.
He's like, dogs and gooses need something explosive this week.
What era was the missile again?
Cold War.
Oh.
Yep. So, I didn't read anything else about it. We're just going with the titles.
So it was nuclear?
Excellent question, Williams. And the next news one, we have why the Indian police suspected this pigeon worked for Chinese spies. And there's a picture of a pigeon. It looks like every other pigeon to me. And now you guys know what it looks like.
Interesting.
So
whatever every other pigeon looks like to you.
Yes. They look like pigeons. But that's all for the news segment. I'm going to turn the time back over to you, Williams. We covered pretty much everything important happening in the world right now.
Well, not a lot going on in the world right now.
Nope.
That's okay. I like it that way.
Mm-hmm. Pigeon spies and whatnot.
Yeah. And that's important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we got that to the public.
I agree. We want people to be aware that those pigeons could be listening to them.
Very true. Very true. Today, our topic, which I shared with Joseph, but not Starks.
How dare you?
We're going to talk about art and creativity.
Ah.
Now, I think this is pretty interesting because I think all of us, in different ways, participate in art. I think everyone does participate in art and creativity. But I mean, look, Starks over here, he does stuff like create wire sculptures. I don't think you've seen any wire. Do you have a wire sculpture around here, Starks?
Not really. I don't have any here. The closest thing I have.
He likes to give them away.
The beginning, yeah, I generally do just give them away. Which reminds me, I still need to make you one for your birthday, Williams. This is the closest thing I have currently. It was the beginning of a car, but
nice.
Haven't finished it. So it's just basically a thing with 4 wheels.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's impressive because I think the wheels spin, don't
they? They do spin.
Yeah.
And it's on impressive. A frame.
I have some experience with wire. Actually, I make chainmail.
Oh, really?
And then a couple other things that are similar to that.
Oh, cool.
And so, I know wire could be a pain to work with a lot of the time.
It can be, yeah.
Do you do sculpture type stuff too, or is it mainly just chainmail? Or
I've made a couple shapes out of the chainmail, like cubes, and one of the things I used to sell a lot was juggling balls made of chainmail that had stuffed with cloth. But that wasn't, a sculpture, just a 3-dimensional object, I guess.
That would be a very painful snowball fight, just throw around these chainmail balls filled with fluff.
It does remind me, once I had a commission done for a friend of mine of chainmail cornhole bags. Where it was a cornhole bag with chainmail around it, and those things hurt.
Really?
Yeah, we threw some at each other, and man, that was...
Well, even a beanbag, throwing it at someone.
I kind of want to see one of these at some point, Joseph.
Yeah, well, I don't...
Well, no, I know you didn't bring one, but next time...
And there will be a next time.
Oh, there will be, 100%.
Yeah.
We anyone who thinks we wouldn't bring on the official president of our unofficial fan club just would be crazy. More than once,
We just can't do it too much because I don't want the fan club to become official. That's
true.
That's
true. Well, that's part of it. That's half the fun is keeping it unofficial.
Yeah.
Before there's a lot of rules, you can bring fireworks to the club and chainmail balls and like this, that, and the other.
If you could find where we meet, you could bring fireworks.
Oh,
whoa!
Really?
Yes.
So where do you meet?
It's a secret. A true fan will find us.
Yeah, they will. They will know.
Well, nobody can blame me for not trying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I did try. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off though. You make chainmail and chainmail balls. That's honestly really cool.
Yeah, I haven't done it too much recently, just because of a lack of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to sell stuff on Etsy, and then I was in a couple of local stores around me, or about 2 stores I ended up in, where I just sold my chainmail products there. It was not the most money, but it was something I liked, kind of like knitting for other people. I did chainmail. That's a nice way to relax.
That's way cool, man.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love it. Also, we'll have to determine some of your hobbies. Maybe I'll make something for you for being on the show out of wire and send it your way.
Dogs and gooses. There's benefits to being a guest.
There is. To all you people that said no to us, you should get on here.
It's a lot of fun. I also got a free thing of Mountain Dew. So that's a pretty big bonus.
Yeah.
That's for Joseph only, though. Everyone else, you guys can't have Mountain Dew. And he got an XL. You guys would get a medium at best.
Yeah, he's the president.
Yeah. I mean, we did get Michaela an XL as well, but I don't know. She was talking about sports, and I like sports.
She's Michaela, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I derailed the whole conversation.
No.
What were we saying?
But I'm saying that all of us, in different ways, have our creative outlets. Like for me,
are you going to say yours, Williams? Say it.
I
crochet.
I crochet.
And you write songs. Beautiful songs. Joseph, have you ever heard this man's music?
No. I asked before, and every time just comes up with some sort of excuse.
He's
like,
afraid
we're working, go back to work, stuff like that.
That's so stupid. I never work. Like,
I know you don't, Starks. That's why you've heard all my music.
You're right. People are like, should we work? And I'm like, I'd rather listen to Williams' music. I'll tell you what it is, though.
I'm saying.
He's afraid of becoming famous. He won't share his music with very many people because of that.
That is understandable. Just knowing you, I think if you did share your music, well,
the fame would go straight to my head
instantly. Yep. Fame and glory. I mean, you already have the entire planet's population as listeners to the podcast.
I know.
It's true.
And I'm content enough splitting the fame. I couldn't handle it if I just
if it was just you, you'd start growing your hair out and just become a total diva. Like, so I'm glad that I'm here to split the fame with you, Williams.
Thanks, sir. And thank goodness Joseph is here to hopefully take a little bit more of the burden off our shoulders.
He's going to take a third of it today.
Oh, yeah.
We all share this evenly. We're brothers.
Yes. And this will be the most viewed episode of the podcast, too. Even though everyone listens to it.
Yeah.
They can listen to it twice.
That's
maybe
3-4 what
times,
happens.
Yeah.
Is we don't want to take the whole share of the market, so we just expect everyone to listen to it once, and then after that, the better ones they should listen to again. The ones that are stellar but not better, they should just keep keep with the ones.
You know, all the episodes are equal. Some are just more equal.
Exactly. I appreciate your way, Joseph.
Very much so. So we all have these different fields in which we like to put our creativity into and create, I think, what we consider art.
Uh-huh.
I think everyone in the world has something like that they like to do.
Some probably more traditional than others. Like
probably,
like not everyone's going to be like into music or sculptures or whatever, but like some people. Okay, this might be considered odd, but I actually like orchestrating a good Excel sheet. Like trying to come up with a good Excel sheet that isn't aesthetically pleasing, but it's very functional. In terms of like you can put in a bunch of inputs and outputs and make it so that it calculates all sorts of stuff for you. I like putting budgets in there and have it calculate, percentage of my income to savings, percentage of my income to this and this, that, and the other. So, I mean, like there are a lot of people who might be interested in those things, but that don't consider it art.
Yeah. I mean, Excel is now esports. They do competitions every year.
Oh, really?
Do they really?
If I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure they just had a big one recently. I remember seeing something about that. But yeah, they do competitions of who could do whatever thing they're trying to do the fastest.
I always knew I was an artist. A competitive exceller.
Well, you go to the tryout strikes and you see where you place and see if you can get to the big leagues.
Try zero. I use a lot of functions that are redundant, and there's much better ways to do it. But it works for me.
Very nice. But yeah, I think it's interesting that we all have these, like, even some of these untraditional things. And I think of much larger things like creating order out of chaos. I think that's kind of, it sounds mystical, right? But I think it relates to our conversation that we've had on Beauty Starks. I think you listened to that.
I did.
What's so funny, Starks?
Nothing. Don't you worry about it, Williams.
All right.
Nothing's funny. Joseph did listen to that episode, and what were you going to say about how it relates to that, Williams? You have more to add to the topic, I'm sure.
I think that beauty is a part of art, and we like beautiful things. For you think that for some reason Excel is beautiful.
It is.
And I think it just lends to organization and things. And I think just the creative process and making art is creating, because you can't create something from nothing. There's a lot of chaotic matter around us, and we take that and we create what we consider art.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that seems to be something that everyone does in some form or another? Is it just part of who we are as human beings? And like maybe why?
Well, I think to be human is to create. Not everyone is artistic, and some are more artistic than others. But deep down, I think everyone has a drive to create something or add their piece to a project or, just the world at large. I think that drives people to create art and to be creative. And some people kind of repress that feeling and just go, this is what I do. I do this office job from 5 to 9 and then go home and just like watch TV. But I think deep down that humans are made to create things and add value by creating.
I think you're right. I think I very much agree with Joseph. I think sometimes where we fall into is the process of creating things can be difficult. But I think ultimately we all do I think ultimately we all do enjoy creating things. Mm-hmm. And I think that can be evident in like Minecraft. I think currently Minecraft is probably the most popular game of all time. And Williams,
for you old people who don't know what Minecraft is, it's a game where you just build a whole bunch of stuff from just elements in the world.
Yeah, it's very blocky. It's not like a super high graphic type game.
Most of you probably wouldn't like it. It's old people.
Williams, don't diss on our older audience.
No, I'm not. I'm just stating facts.
Well, okay. I'll have you know that my parents are in that group.
Wait, mine too? No way.
guys, my parents are old too.
Hey, I will not have you talking bad about Brian and Linda on my show.
Age is not a bad thing.
Well,
all the time.
Okay, to be fair, it's 50% your show and 50% my show. Fine, you can talk about them halfway poorly.
Or just pick a parent and
yeah, one of the two. One of the two.
I do think, yeah. What astounds me, though, is sometimes we like to create to relax. Which gets, because we work hard all day, and then we're like, in our spare time, to relax, we work more.
I think we enjoy the problem-solving aspect of it. I think sometimes if you're tired, the effort aspect of it, or the tediousness of it, can be difficult. And that's why I feel like creative games are popular, because you then get to create, and you get to experience that kind of feeling of overcoming issues, like pushing through this or that or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't face the same hardship of being like ridiculously tired after a long day's work or that sort of thing.
I mean, there are times where I'll have my long day of work. I go home, I start on a hobby or a project that I enjoy, and then even though I was dead tired, 10 minutes before starting this project, I just go into it, and I'm so focused and driven, and I want to get a certain part of it done, and I'm just, that it keeps me going and gives me more energy than I would have before.
Mm-hmm. There was a guy that I worked with at Frito-Lay who said to me, he said, after you clock in, start working. He said, don't look at the clock, focus on what you need to do next. He said, if you do that, your work day is going to fly by. If you're focusing on how long a time you have left, or focusing on being done, or yada, 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 your day is going to take forever. But if you're just focused on, like, I need to do this, and then this, and then this, and this, and this, then your day is going to go so much faster.
Yeah, something I did a lot at work. I worked a variety of jobs in a couple of different industries, but never anything that required a lot of my attention all at once for a long period of time. Usually things like working in the kitchen or custodial, stuff like that.
Wait, what? That requires all our focus all the time.
And so something I do to kind of keep me going is I think of D&D stuff and what sort of stuff I can do for my players. So I spend hours just thinking while at work, which makes it so the time just flies by. Yeah. Even though without thinking it, doing the same work, it would be a slog and take forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good method.
That's an interesting creative outlet. Like, how much of that do you come up with on your own, or is there certain?
So with D&D, there's rules, and then there's things like monster, stats and like magic items. But the story and then some of the monsters and magic items, I come up with all on my own. Maybe taking inspiration from other media. Sometimes it'll be very similar to one thing, sometimes not. But the big thing with the creative part is you also are playing with a bunch of other players who can choose what they do. So sometimes you're like, this is what's going to happen today. They're going to go to this dungeon, kill this boss, and then they'll find like a cat they find really cool and go chase after it. And you go, okay, I guess we're doing that now. And you just have to kind of adapt what you're doing to what the players are doing.
So it can be fairly improvisational.
Yes.
So this episode's on art. Would you consider that a form of art, potentially?
It is definitely creative. I don't know if it's more of art, because I don't really consider a lot of games as art, especially board games. Like, there's art involved in it, but the act of playing, unless maybe if you're playing for like a podcast, you're doing a D&D podcast, I wouldn't consider it art necessarily, but just creative and a game.
That's interesting. So not every creative endeavor is an art.
Yeah, I think so. Because you can also have creative problem solving in like your job, or that doesn't necessarily mean it's art.
Yeah, it's true.
That's kind of interesting. So where do we want to draw the line then?
Are you guys trying to rule out Excel? I hear you guys are trying to rule out Excel right now.
I was.
I'm
to be completely honest, I did not agree.
I'm just kidding. Well, what if I draw in Excel? What if I light certain boxes up so they make images? Then is it art?
I mean, there are people who use Excel to make actual like landscape paintings.
That's true.
Do they really?
Yeah. You should Google just Excel art and some pretty cool stuff.
I've also used I've heard of people who use it to plan like specific things. I can't remember. What was the one I heard? It was like planning music or something, where they would fill in certain boxes to make certain patterns. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I apologize.
That is crazy.
Williams, I didn't. Oh, the Mona Lisa on Excel.
Yeah.
See, I don't ever want to hear you say Excel's not art again, Williams.
But I wouldn't consider the Mona Lisa art.
That's a whole another topic.
Hot take.
Could be another episode by itself.
Is the Mona Lisa art? Sorry, Williams, I didn't mean to cut off your question of like, where do we draw the line? What actually is art and what is not art?
Well, I don't think there is a hard line when it comes to what is creative and what is art. I think there's just, it's kind of areas of gray near the line where it might be art, it might not be, and I think it depends on your personal opinion, because a lot of art is about opinion. Like, you might not like a painting, but then someone else finds deep meaning and it changes their life.
So is there a set number of people that need to find deep meaning before it's considered art? Or is it just like one person and then it can be considered art?
I think if one person considers it art, then it's art to them.
Oh, so it's a subjective experience.
It's a subjective experience. Thank you, Williams, for your big words and philosophy talk.
I don't know.
That is intriguing. Because I guess when you think of creative endeavors that wouldn't be in line with art, because you could do creative things. I'm trying to think of Excel.
Yeah.
And so, you said deep meaning, didn't you, or did you just say meaning?
Either.
I think it's either or is fine.
Either or.
Because I mean, you can find meaning in a spreadsheet. I mean,
well, of course you can.
I think
it's
that's
art,
the purpose of it. Right. I mean, or utility, I should say, maybe is the better term, which is a meaning.
Mm-hmm. Well,
maybe deeper meaning for art, or
maybe
one
art
thing that
needs an emotional component, makes you feel something, either positive or negative. So that could be part of it. Does it make people feel some sort of emotion about it?
Well, here's the thing. So, I've heard a lot of arguments about art and utility. So, like, some people have tables that are like very ornate. Obviously, a very skilled craftsman built that table, and they built it in such a way to where it's like very well done, very beautiful. Is it art, or does the mere fact that it has utility make it not art?
That's a good question too. I didn't even think about that.
I'm going to look up the definition really quick of art, because I want to know if it says anything about utility, if art is specifically something that's meant to be viewed or like perceived.
I thought for a second about the beautiful component, like maybe beauty's component. However, what Joseph said, I think, is right in the context of, I mean, because it can make you feel good or bad. Art can. So I think good would be beauty, but bad, I don't know if consider that beauty or not.
Are you ready? Do you want the? Do you have the definition?
Yeah, Joseph pulled it up.
Oh, go for it.
All right. It is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. And the second one says the various branches of creative activity such as painting, music, literature, and dance. That's interesting. That first part, like towards the end, it said
primarily for the beauty and emotional power. So with the table is, where is the line between how much of it is for utility and how much is for, emotion and beauty? Because you can always just buy a white folding table from like Costco for like $50, and that's just as useful as an ornate dining room table, assuming the sizes are about the same.
I agree. And so I think that primarily part is an interesting distinction. It makes me wonder, like, does that mean that generally speaking, it won't serve utility and there are exceptions? Or does that mean completely all the time? Like there aren't exceptions if it serves utility, or if it was designed to serve utility, does that make it not art?
But if you go to an art museum, you're going to find things that are fragile and not meant to be used in everyday life.
But at the same time, you think of like a cathedral from like medieval times, where I would consider the entire building a piece of art. just by looking at it, but it still has a function of serving for a place to worship. But the entire building is so beautiful, you could consider it a piece of art.
So perhaps then in that case there would be a distinction between like the building and the parts that you consider art. For example, like even on the table, if it was carved to be ornate, let's say that the legs have intricate designs that are ornate, then you could say that those pieces are art, but the table itself is something that performs a function. And the same could be said of a church building.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I think, no matter how long someone discusses this topic, we'll never come on and make a hard answer. I think it'll always be, again, personal preference. There's probably some communal, like, you look at this and everyone goes, this is art, but there'll never be like, when you get to the edges, what's art and what's not, there'll be like a hard line.
I think I wouldn't even be that offended by there being a hard line, because here's my thought. I feel like as a society, we get too caught up in specific definitions sometimes, where you're like, if something isn't art, it is therefore not valuable or skillful.
Yeah.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, but the reality is there are tons of things that are valuable that require skill that may not be considered art. Perhaps the beauty of them is that they fulfill their utility so well.
Like a porta potty. Not art, but definitely essential.
That is exactly what I thought of Williams as a porta potty.
No one likes it, but it's essential.
Joseph, what do you think? Porta potty, art or not art?
I think not art.
Oh, explain yourself. Williams vehemently disagrees.
I think it's just, the smell.
No, I'm not saying that it's considered art, but that's exactly what you're saying. Like, if it's not art, it's not valuable, but
however,
that's definitely not art.
Yeah, well, nobody who's been driving for 4 hours and really needs to use the bathroom is going to say that porta potty is not valuable.
But there is, at least, I think it's a famous piece of artwork that I can't remember the name of. But I've seen a couple of times where it's a urinal, like from the early 1910s, 1920s. I could be wrong about the time. Again, I haven't done research into this piece of art, but it's just like a urinal that has, I think, some writing on it, and that is considered a piece of art.
Really?
But it doesn't have the functions of a urinal. It's not hooked up to plumbing or anything.
Huh.
See, it seems to me like art generally depicts an idea or a representation of some sort of situation, something along those lines. Like most art has some kind of deeper meaning or symbolism to it, and there's different forms of it. Like the wire stuff that I like to make, which would be very loosely considered art. You'd probably never find it in a museum.
Yet, until after this podcast.
Yeah, well, once the whole world's population will be fighting over things, it'll become incredibly valuable. But those, like, what I do with those is I try and tell a story. Like I'll make a fisherman and he's pulling back his reel and it's bent back as he tries to reel in a big fish, and it's a very short story, but it's supposed to represent a moment in time. And the one I made for Williams for his birthday a couple years ago, it's a guy playing his guitar. It's that simple. It's just like a guy playing his guitar is supposed to elicit the mood of a man who's he's got his head bent and he's focused on his guitar and different things. I think most art has something of that type, where it's representative of something or some kind of mood or feeling.
Yeah.
And that's where I think yours is kind of interesting, doing chainmail, because it's also it's something you could wear.
Yeah, it's something that, you could wear. It's pretty heavy. No, there's something else that I want to hear you guys' opinion on that I do. I make custom dice for D&D made out of resin. And I do different colors and glitters and all that sort of stuff. So each dice is unique and has, swirling patterns. And I used to sell these, and I, played with a couple people who had them. And they would spend an hour, while we're playing D&D, kind of just looking at the different colors. And as you look in different parts in the light, it changes the view. But it's still a dice.
Yeah, it serves
and it
utility.
Still serves a utility. So would you consider that art or not art?
That's kind of like riding the line.
Yeah. I think, based off of our current understanding and definition that we've discussed in the show, which I'm open for interpretation, I think I would say not art, but skillful and perhaps artful, which I think means like it's like it was
There's an
made by
artistic
somebody.
element.
Yes, there's an artistic element, but it's not in and of itself like art.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Because I mean, they were made to serve a purpose, but also made a lot of the times by request to have like these colors because they represent something in the game, maybe a spell or a player's character. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I think it's artful, but not art, which I would agree with.
And I think all other things being the same, having a really cool looking, multicolored with swirls on the inside die, rather than just having a plain old regular die of the same kind,
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's gonna go for the cool looking one. We had like this innate sense of like, that's neat. Which else? Yeah.
No, I agree with that. You know what I was thinking about? Sorry, this is a little off topic. It's on topic, but I was like, a blanket. You can make some very intricate blankets. Williams, you crochet. Williams, have you seen some of Williams' crochet stuff, Joseph?
Not yet.
It's amazing.
You won't show it to me.
Oh,
Williams, start distracting your employees at work more, okay? Jeez Louise, this guy.
I know, it's my bad.
He makes some awesome stuff. Like he's made like, maybe I shouldn't give it away, but he's made a baby Yoda, and there's a couple pictures I know he has that I won't mention yet, but just very good at crocheting.
Yeah.
He made Jonah. What did you make Jonah? Was it an Among Us thing?
Williams, yeah, it was a little Among Us figurine. So that's an ugly sweater I made for my dad. You'll see him wearing it in one of these pictures.
For the audio listeners, Williams is now showing me pictures of all the stuff he's made. And
that won the ugly sweater competition right there.
Pretty impressive.
I would sweater
call
I made.
That ugly Williams, sweater art.
I hope you're very proud of
your
sweater. Ugly sweater. It's quite difficult.
I did that for a project, the new kid would need to do.
And I mean, what you're talking about, a blanket. You could have a crocheted blanket or piece of cloth that you made to hang up on a wall with depicting whatever art it is, and then one day go, I'm taking this down because I'm cold and I'm gonna use it as a blanket. So does it become not art, even though after 2 years of you made it or bought it to hang up on a wall for like 2 years, and then one day you're like, I'm cold, I need a blanket. You took it down and used it as a blanket. So does that go from art to not art, or is it never art, or what's your thoughts on that?
You're looking at me, but I want to reflect this to Williams.
I'm looking at you because my
that's your
turn that way.
That's your field of view.
That's my bad.
It's not your bad. It's just the field of view. But I am going to blame you because I want to.
All right.
Okay. I'm used to it. I think that just because something is, I think there's certain things that I think most of us can say that's art, like unless you're just a contrarian, or maybe I don't know, because I also think of people who maybe aren't from a more modern society like us, and they see some of the stuff we do and consider art, and they're probably not gonna call it
art,
right, or won't appreciate it as much as we would, or maybe they would, because I also think that a lot of things we do are complex enough to where they're gonna be like, that's really intriguing. Like, how did they get all those colors? And
go ahead, Wade.
And I think that stuff like painting and drawing are almost a universal human experience. Cave drawings, for example. And so in that sense, maybe we all have this proclivity towards certain types of art, at least. And so I think, to me, a piece that I consider art is going to still be a piece of art, even if I do use it a little bit.
And to add to that, are you done with your thought? Do I need to?
Go ahead.
Okay, to add to that, I think that art being used for something doesn't make it not art. I think, so it seems to me, and I could be wrong on this because I just barely cooked it up, it seems to me like part of what makes art is the intention when you made it and when it was released. And there are some exceptions, like sometimes people will make something and it just becomes art, just because it's representative of some idea or thing like that. But, like, for example, you could take the Mona Lisa and you could cut it up into strands and turn it into rags. They wouldn't be very good rags.
It'd be an improvement. I hate on the Mona Lisa because I don't think it's as cool as people make it out.
Well, to be fair, it is the most famous, like, painting
Wasn't it something to do with the angle he painted the girl?
Yeah. Well, I think it became the most famous painting because uh, it was stolen and then put in the news a bunch, and so when it was recovered, it was a big story. And it kind of just snowballed from there.
So in other words, it doesn't deserve to have the attention it does.
Well, no.
In and of itself,
I'm not an art connoisseur myself, but I would assume, just based on seeing it, that there are probably people who are as skilled or more skilled. Like, who painted the Mona Lisa?
It was a famous guy, right?
It
wasn't Da Vinci or anything.
No, I don't think it was any of the big ones, maybe. But although by virtue of it was. Wait, no, that's less. Wait.
It was Leonardo da Vinci.
It was Da Vinci.
Am I good or what?
I thought it was, but at the same time, I didn't want to say if it was, wrong on the podcast.
Let me look.
You got to be brave, Joseph. Just get it wrong.
Oh no!
I mean, it looks very good. Like, don't get me wrong, but I also think.
Were we looking at the same painting?
Well,
I understand that.
Yeah, but I think in terms of art that I've seen, it's not particularly moving in any sort of way, more than like anything else. But what were? Sorry, I scrolled through the images of the Mona Lisa, and there was a bunch of wacky ones. And the last one was her, like, if she was like way heavier than she was, and just caught me off guard because they had like this tiny face too. They just changed the proportions and all this stuff. But anyway,
look up Mona Lisa pictures on Google.
Yeah, look it up, and you'll know what I'm talking about. So, I think that art serving a utility that it wasn't intended to serve, or that it perhaps was made to serve, like in your case, the blanket, but it wasn't intended to. Maybe it was intended to be used as like a decoration.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily makes it not art. It would more make it like art that you're using for something else. Because you could chop up the Mona Lisa, and turn it into rags, and they wouldn't be very good rags. But would that make it so that it wasn't art? Like, I mean, it might make it so it's not worth anything anymore.
It never was. Oh,
I'm just now learning about Williams' beef with Mona Lisa and Leonardo da Vinci.
I think it's look. I don't have a problem with Da Vinci. I think he's a decently cool guy, from what I know. I'm just saying that the Mona Lisa gets way too much attention for what it is.
I think it's too much attention, but it's still a classical piece of art. But waiting for hours in line to see it behind, couple feet, or not feet, but a couple inches of glass.
Is that how it is to go and see it?
It's the most famous painting in the world. I bet it is.
I've seen, I don't know, I haven't been, but I've seen pictures of like crowds crowded outside of it. And so.
Goodness.
It's a hassle to get to it, apparently.
Well, I probably will never see it. I'll be honest. I'm not that interested.
Yep. I don't know. So I like art, but even going to like the local BYU Museum of Art, the MOA, I appreciate lots of the different things because I just like a beautiful picture, or what I think is a beautiful picture, like a landscape.
Yeah.
I'm not into the abstract type stuff.
No, me either. I don't think a lot of people are, though, into abstract as much, except artists.
Yeah.
It seems to me, okay, so when you become very skilled at something, breaking the rules of it then becomes almost like a beneficial thing because you know the rules and you intentionally break them. And I think, to me, that's what abstract art is. Yeah. I think artists of the world are like, these are the rules, and we're going to break them by making this weird art. And everyone else is like, why are there a bunch of weird lines on a page? And they're like, wow, like they're sending new trends type of thing.
Yeah. I think it's, you know the rules so well, you know how to break them and still make something good. Well, someone who doesn't know the rules would break them on accident, but
it wouldn't be good.
It wouldn't be good.
Because they broke the rules, yeah.
Because they broke the rules. And so it just shows mastery that you can still break the rules and produce good art.
Yeah.
By whatever definition of good art you want to have.
Yeah.
That was essentially, I took a Music 101 class or whatever to complete my art credit. And that was basically the class. They're like, these guys followed the rules, and then these guys after them, they took the rules and they just did wacky stuff with it. And that's art. Although I think, yeah, like you said, I think to them, they're thinking they're making art. But I think to the general, everyone else, people don't like it. The avant-garde, I think it's kind of called, when they kind of go off.
Kind of the elites of that specific circle.
Yeah. There's a certain group that it is for, but...
Well, I think also people generally, just to some degree, enjoy being counterculture. Like, whatever it is, like if there's some sort of commonly accepted thing, people like to feel different. They like to feel outside of the common culture. So if you can break the rules in such a way, then a lot of times people will.
I think they just want to feel unique.
Yeah.
And by going against what everyone else's does is unique by definition. So
yeah,
they do it.
Yeah.
Well, I think each art piece is unique.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the beauty of it in general. Which, I mean, so I don't think you need to go way off into, you know, to use the colloquial term, left field to create your art. I think the beauty of it in some ways are the rules. Because you're taking stuff out of chaos and creating something. But if it just looks like the chaos that you took it from, did you really do much with it or accomplish your task?
Well, sometimes if you know the history behind a piece of art, and maybe it was like part of a movement of art where a bunch of similar artworks following new rules come out, it adds to your enjoyment of that one piece of art because you know all the history of like, oh, it's part of this movement which came about because of this person who was drawing against like, this event that happened in like government or, some sort of social thing. So a lot of times big art movements have a tie to what people are doing at the time, either social or like government changes or some disaster or war. It causes changes in that local art scene, which then knowing that, again, enhances your enjoyment of it.
Yeah. I think that makes perfect sense, is like having more background and understanding of the things of the time and the circumstances surrounding it can drastically increase appreciation for something, understanding what they represent.
Joseph, I know that you said earlier that you had some hot takes about this topic.
Ooh. Let's hear the hot takes from Joseph.
Real quick, before we move on, I was just pulling up
go ahead.
Example piece of art from the previous thing I was talking about in a class recently. I just want to show you this art, and for those listening at home, it's Pablo Picasso's. I'm gonna butcher this name. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure my humanities teacher who's be listening right now is gonna feel a little tinge of pain at me pronouncing this, but it's Grunanelcia, Guernica from Pablo Picasso, and it's it's not something you look at and go, that is beautiful. But
yeah, I definitely wouldn't.
When I first looked at it, I wouldn't. There's skill to it.
Yeah.
But it's not a looker. And I was wondering why we were talking about this in class the other day, and then my teacher told the story behind it, and I might get some small details wrong, but it was basically either in World War II or World War I. I cannot remember, but there was a bombing in Spain that Spain gave permission to bomb on their own village where hundreds of people died, and the Spanish government gave the okay for whoever did it to do that, to test, different techniques in bombing.
Really?
And it just caused so much pain in the country that this artwork was made, and it's all in black and white, and there's so much symbolism where each character symbolizes different things, and some people have disagreements on what it symbolizes, but after you learn the story of it, you go, when I first saw it, I'm like, it's ugly, but then I learned the story, I'm like, that really has value more now that I know that. And it's also, if you ever see it in person, huge, where it's just not a painting, it's a wall. So it really envelops you in the feelings of grief and despair that the country at the time was feeling because of this horrific act. And knowing the history behind it and seeing it in person adds to the experience, and I think makes the art from not the greatest piece of art to now one of my personal favorite pieces of art I've ever seen.
That is crazy. It's also fascinating to me that, like what you're saying about size, because sometimes the size of a piece of art just like boggles your mind. There's this really pretty painting I want to make sure I get the guy's name right because I think he did an excellent job on it. Cowboy artists.
Oh, we might have been thinking along the same lines, Williams. There was a guy who
Montana.
did tons of stuff.
And he has this one painting. It's actually in the state capital of Montana, and it's where the judges sit, up on their stand, the Supreme Court of Montana judges, and right behind them is this giant mural. Takes up the entire wall of this huge vaulted ceilinged room in the middle of this place, and it's like these cattlemen chasing these wolves or whatever. And it's funny because one wolf just looks really angry. I guess there was a judge that he really did not like. And so he put that one to where if you were just sitting there in the audience, it looks like that wolf's about to just attack the guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's huge too. And it looks very, the size does make a difference seeing it like that instead of just on paper. And to know that was right above his head.
Yeah, I think
it just adds,
how big the art was and, where it was drawn or what, medium it was drawn on really can add or subtract to the meaning of the art.
Right. I believe the guy's name was C.M. Russell, if I remember right.
Gotcha.
He sounds familiar. I'm gonna look that up. There was one Western artist that I feel like is my favorite kind of art. Well, it's either him. I kind of like art that is a little bit more. I guess everyone likes this. That kind of connects them to their personal experience. So there was one guy, I can't remember who he was, but he did kind of Western art, and it just reminded me a lot of my grandparents and like the part of rural Idaho where I'm from and different things. And I thought he did an excellent job of like portraying specific scenes that reminded me of like specific things in my life. The same thing is true of. He's also a really famous artist. Actually, BYU did a gallery of his stuff too. He did like painting for calendars or something for years, and he did kind of like they weren't the most involved art, but it was more like each of them depicted a specific idea or joke or thing like that. And he did it for years.
I know who you're talking about, and
I mean, maybe I've heard of him, but it doesn't come to mind right now. Maybe once I hear the name, I go, "Oh," but it doesn't come to mind.
If you see some of the pictures, you'll probably recognize at least some of them.
They're kind of old timey looking and usually depict, like a kid in an old store,
Yeah, or a kid like in a doctor and the kid's overreacting or something.
Gotcha.
They like depict specific scenes in life.
That's interesting. Maybe I will probably look at that for a bit. I do like looking at some art that has a connection to people around me. So I like to feel what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to learn about someone by looking at the things they like and why they like it.
Yeah, I can't find the guy's name, but know that he's out there.
We'll find it. We'll talk about it later, I guess. But I feel like that's the kind of stuff that I relate to, at least.
I get that. I just I've always liked landscapes. As I'm driving, looking at them, like, wow, that's beautiful. So I like pictures of that too.
Yeah, landscapes can be just absolutely gorgeous, and if an artist can capture that either in painting or photography, it is just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
like a nice picture of the Badlands, Well,
I don't know about that one. The Badlands, it sounds like a really boring picture. Maybe you could just make a blank slate,
Starks,
and just hang up.
Who's the host this one? Who's the host this one?
Does that make you in charge?
Oh. It does.
Oh, my bad.
The Badlands are beautiful.
All right, I'll take your word for it. Maybe I won't look into that one though.
Fine, Joseph. Okay. Hurt my feelings. But sorry, I take away from the question I asked you earlier about your hot takes.
So
I don't know if we veered the conversation towards that or kind of away from
my hot takes. I mean, maybe it's not that hot, but it's at least a hot take amongst art connoisseurs. Is first of all, I think a lot of modern art is just kind of stupid. Even knowing the history behind it and the stories and context, it's just like I don't care. And then it's like sold for so much money, millions, and go. It's not a lack of skill that I don't think it should be art because of lack of skill. I think it doesn't speak to me, and I don't think it speaks to the majority of the population.
I think that's fair, but I also think if you think about it, like the kind of art that you're referring to that's like considered broadly art,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of stuff, I feel like is more. It's more tuned towards like kind of our cultural air quotes elites, if you
Yeah.
will, like politicians, actors and actresses, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that it's generally made to relate to like the common man or like people that are not like cultural air quotes elites.
Yeah. So that was a soft hard take because I think a lot of people agree. But this next hard take,
Ooh,
a lot of people
Ooh.
will disagree and get mad at me. And I have friends who I've talked to this about, and they have gotten mad at me. So, just let me, before you make a judgment,
Williams, ball your hand into a fist right now.
You're ready.
Closer to him.
Before I make it, you guys make a judgment.
Where's the pitchforks?
Explain my thinking behind this. I think AI art isn't that bad, and that it's gonna happen, and people should just accept it. Now, there's some caveats to that, but that's a broad statement. If it makes someone lose their job, that sucks, and that is tough for them, and you get empathize with that. But at the same time, it is a technology that is here, and at this point, I don't think even if a government body wanted to stop it, you can't really.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there should be some protections around it. Like, they shouldn't be able to rip someone's art and use that as part of, their database without permission. I think you should be able to get permission from the original artist to, train your AI with it. But it's a new technology, and if it allows, the average person to create art for whatever project or thing they want, I think that is a good thing.
I mean, I'm not an expert necessarily in the AI field. I don't, from what I've seen of AI art, I'm pretty kosher with it. Maybe I'm in the minority or whatever, if you're saying that you're getting that kind of negative reaction. But when I think of, it's just, how many jobs is that really going to take away from people? I think of one guy who kind of makes his living doing art, but not even really, because he also does a part-time job elsewhere. And so I think, regardless, no matter how good AI gets at art, there's going to be some people who are like, ooh, but I really love human-made art. That stuff is good, and I'll die on that hill. And so there's always going to be a market.
Yeah.
I think, like, what kind of art are we talking? Are you talking about, like, world-leading art?
Ooh, it sounds like Starks is upset about this one.
I'm incredibly angry. Very upset. You're lucky you're on the other side of the table. Or I'm lucky, rather. Don't hurt me, Joseph. Even if I strongly disagree with you.
Yeah, I went to the gym one time. That's started working out.
Look out. If he throws a kick at you, his legs are very muscular.
I'm fairly certain. I've been watching for Joseph. Be merciful, Joseph.
Yeah. You watch out.
Okay.
Just give me 6 months to, bulk up a little, and then I'll come after you.
I'll have to ask Williams to protect me. Williams, you would do it, right?
Depends on what your answer to this question is.
Well, okay, so here's my thought. First off, I don't actually disagree with you, but I'm also not like an art connoisseur.
Yeah.
However, I would say to me, part of what makes art is the skill and time and effort that's required. Mm-hmm. Like, if somebody could just like throw something out without ever having developed that skill, I feel like it takes away from it a little bit. Because if everybody can do it, then I think that it makes it much less valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if everybody can
go to
ChatGPT,
if everyone's super,
no one will.
Yeah, well, I do agree. But I was just talking about how one of my favorite pieces of art isn't because the first time I looked at it, I was like, that's beautiful. That's because after hearing the story and the human connection. But at the same time, the majority of art that is used in day-to-day are things for like advertisements and products and like, commercials or TV shows or, cartoons. Like the most drawn things
But would those be considered art in the classical sense that we've been talking about?
Maybe. We still haven't, it's hard to get a definition.
We haven't determined that one.
But if it's a like digital art, that sort of stuff will be easily replaced by an AI thing.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. There will be some effect on the job market with that. But I think I've heard a lot of examples of the printing press.
Yeah.
How, like, with jobs being replaced, new jobs will be created. Like, that's kind of how it is. And there are limits to AI. So will they take care of or get rid of a lot of the lower end-ish writers? The other thing about AI is it draws from human experience. So AI will be limited to that specific brand of like art that it's best at. And the longer it goes, the less variety we will find in it.
Yeah. Well,
Williams? Go ahead.
Right now, with the AI, I know a little bit about this. I've done some research. I'm not an expert by any means, but I, can hold a conversation about it. At least I hope and think so.
You're a genius in it, and we should trust everything you say. That's what you're saying.
What I could say, could be wrong. I'm not sure, but it's the thing where there's just so much stuff out there on the internet, so many different genres and things. Yeah, it can only be trained on what is out there, but everything's out there. There's just so much information that is on the internet that a human can never learn it all because, where you have squishy brains. But a data center, in some city can learn it all using all them terabytes of memory it has. Or petabytes or how much
whatever it is, I have no idea.
Computer stuff.
Computer stuff.
Joseph knows he's doing IS.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Trust his word.
For those who don't know, IS, part of it is AI development.
Oh, well, that's perfect. I actually didn't know what IS is, so I'm glad you specified.
It's kind of, it's a broad field, but you could think of it as collecting and then analyzing large amount of data for businesses.
Oh, cool.
So it's a mixture of computer science and business. Like, it's under the business umbrella. But it has a lot to do with computer science.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, Williams, you look like you have something you want to share.
Oh, I discovered that the guy's name that we were looking for earlier, the small town, the cool scenars, Norman Rockwell.
Norman Rockwell, that's
gotcha.
Yeah.
And here's a like one of his pictures he did.
Oh yeah, I've seen those before.
Yeah.
I really do like those.
Things.
For those of you at home, they're pretty fun to look up. He's got a ton of them, like thousands and thousands, I think. Because he did them for like a Sunday newspaper. Or
the Saturday Morning Post or Sunday.
Yeah, that's what it was. Saturday Morning Post or something. He did it for years. So, really cool.
Now I have a question for you guys. If you take an AI trained on Norman Rockwell, and the AI could produce paintings that are indistinguishable from, I assume they have physical, but like just a digital picture of it, where you have a lineup of 10 of them, and one is produced by AI, and you go through all 10, and you can't tell. Does that mean the one that's AI isn't worth as much as the 9, even though you can't tell the difference?
I would say so. Because the AI replicated Norman Rockwell's style. It didn't come up with it on its own. That is still Norman Rockwell's thing. So I think, to me, like, giving him credit, his stuff would, in my mind, be more valuable still than the copycat of it.
And I also think it's interesting because Norman Rockwell's paintings, they're like lived experiences, sort of a thing. And I don't know if an AI could take all of his paintings and try and find some sort of middle ground and still produce something that would be like a lived experience. I think they'd do something kind of wacky.
Well, and the thing about about Norman Rockwell's things is he did a very good job of like portraying ideas and portraying experiences, like you're saying, like it's a lived experience. And I don't know that I think an AI could do that without drawing from his experiences that he'd already done.
Yeah, but I'm not saying if it can, because
let's say
given 100 years from now,
automatically.
Yeah, because who knows? In 100 years, maybe it can. But let's say you have an AI that can, and without being told that it's made by AI, is 100% just looks like one of his paintings, and you cannot tell a difference whatsoever. Is it worth less once you like if you're told to like rank them, these 10 paintings from your least favorite to your most favorite, and then at the end you told like your number 7th pick was the AI, would you move it lower after you already ranked it?
I mean, are we talking about monetary value, or are you talking about like am
Just
I
like your
am I
favorites.
just saying my favorites?
Your favorites.
No, then I don't think it changes my favorite because for whatever reason that was my 7th pick because I related to it
Yeah.
or because it depicted something or whatever.
Sorry.
Like no, you're good. If I relate to it, then I relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm gonna be putting them out for like auction, then I'd be like, okay, this one's not from Norman Rockwell.
Well, yeah.
This is made based on his style, but it was made by like me or some computer nerd.
For
or
auction and sale, whoever made the painting, that does matter. But for enjoyment,
it's just like
just
is.
Yeah, I think
so that's
for simple
kind of what
pleasure.
I'm trying to argue is for enjoyment and that sort of stuff. If you can't tell a difference from AI and not AI, and you like it,
and you can get it cheaper. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But if I could decide which one would go up in my house, like between one that an actual artist did and between one that an AI created, I think I'd rather put up with the one that the artist did.
Yeah.
Me too.
I think so too, but I think it would just come to a point where any digital art might not even be able to tell. Because I could say, people would just lie on the internet and say, I painted this or I drew this when they did it. Right now, there's ways to tell what's AI and what's not, but that's not going to be the case forever.
It seems like a lot of people do digital art, but it also seems like that's kind of the appeal of it is dying.
Yeah.
Because I think you can produce it a lot quicker than other mediums and stuff. I don't know. That's something I found intriguing. I learned that a little while back.
It is interesting.
There's also some satisfaction from making it yourself, but before we go down that rabbit hole, I do think before we end the episode, we should acknowledge whether or not we are going to stick with this like mamby-pamby definition of art. Is that just what art is? Is it just straight up subjective? Or are we going to pick something that we, as
something
the
solid,
silly
firm,
goose and the dirty dog, and the official president of our unofficial fan club are willing to die on, and what art is?
Personally, I don't think there's going to be a hard line, like I've been saying throughout the podcast, because art is human. And, well, humans don't have, it changes person to person because every human is different. It's depending on your experiences and what you do and have done in your life. You're going to change your opinion, and that's going to change where you think art is, because it's all emotional, and everyone doesn't have the same emotions.
The flimsiness of humanity.
If you want to disagree, that's okay. I'm okay. I know my opinions aren't necessarily fact; they're just my opinions.
Your opinion is unacceptable.
Okay,
I'm just kidding. That was
Starks is wanting to pick a hill to die
on. No, I do think. Here's my thought. I do think the definition of art found on Google is fairly good.
Mm-hmm.
I think, at least for me, it would generally be something that was made or perceived generally as art. Like it's made with that purpose in mind, or perhaps somebody who is a very famous, like let's say he makes very famous chairs, and he makes chairs, and in his last one, because he does such fine work, he passes away, and they put that and indite into a museum. I think that then becomes art in my mind, because its purpose is no longer to be used as a chair. Its purpose is to be perceived, viewed. It represents an idea. In this case, a hardworking craftsman in his work who had such skill and prowess that they preserved his work, for that purpose. And so I think it's something that, like it says, it elicits a positive emotion, or I suppose some sort of appreciation emotion, because some art can actually be detrimental emotion because it's trying to make a statement to the point of your painting.
Provocative.
Yeah, provocative. But I also think that generally it is to be classified as art in the public mind, which I suppose is a little bit of a circular definition. But I think it's subjective to, dang it, I just circularly agreed with Joseph. All right, we don't have to fight anymore. It's subjective to the people that are viewing it. Cause
something that that's been popping up in my mind throughout, that I'm just going to throw out.
Unacceptable.
Something that, kind of relates back to Aristotle a little bit. Aristotle, as we like to belovedly call him sometimes.
Yes.
But he talked a lot about the telos, or the end of something, and how that affects what it is, like its usefulness, how we use it, its purpose. And I think that a lot of good art was just meant to be art.
True.
But I also see where it kind of fluctuates, like you were saying.
Yeah.
This guy died, he made a whole bunch of chairs, and this was the last one.
Well, I think like 95+% of things that are art everyone would be like, yeah, that's art. It's just the last couple % of things that's like, is it or is it not? Like, the majority, the Google definition just works. But it's when you get to the, defining it straight for everything, it's a little harder to do that.
Yeah. I think I'm leaning towards there's a subjectiveness to it. It's not completely subjective in that it's something that's meant to elicit a specific response through viewing, or I suppose you could say experiencing, because it also includes music. Music is a form of art in some cases, I think, like some of the classical pieces and different stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
fantastic.
So Williams, what's your opinion on art? Just close us off.
No more art. Down with art. No, I think
controversial opinion.
The things I think I'm a little bit more of a traditional individual, maybe.
Ridiculous.
I just like things that I think are pretty, and like I say, when I go to an art museum, I don't agree with everyone's thoughts on art. I look at a picture, I'm like, that's something I like. I look at another picture, that's something I really don't care for. And so I like something that.
Do you think it's subjective to your personal experience? Yes? No?
Yeah, at least to a certain degree. Like I said, I think there are things that we can almost universally agree on.
Yeah.
As like a beautiful painting or something. But a large amount, there are times when you do kind of wonder. I don't know, another thing, real quick, is when Joseph was talking about modern art, I agree, I think it's stupid. However, I think some pieces are neat. And there was one that was done where this lady blew up a shed. She had this old shed in her backyard. I think she loaded it with dynamite or something, blew it to bits, and then she hung it up, like to look like it was blowing in the process of blowing up. And that was an art piece. So I wouldn't consider that beautiful. I would say that it is neat and fascinating.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so I think that's more what modern art is going for. It's more of a neat and fascinating thing rather than a...
Well, modern artists, they face the struggle of... And I think we run into the same thing with media. You face the struggle of coming up with new content. Because, like, art's been around for a long time. And I think the fact that we are getting better at preserving things, and there's so much distribution of media at this point in all of its facets, it makes it difficult to come up with new content.
Very true.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the Mona Lisa. Maybe you would think it was beautiful if you had to go to a museum to see it. But
I don't think so.
Nowadays, for your entire life or whatever, you've been seeing the Mona Lisa just through the internet. So you've kind of
pretty much everybody can recognize it on site.
Yeah.
I will see that going to Mount Rushmore or something, that was way more beautiful in person, way more breathtaking than it was to just look at pictures.
In person is always superior.
Yeah. Well, I know that Joseph here has lots of things to do tonight.
Yeah.
And so I think we're coming to a close. But Joseph, is there anything that you'd like to say on this podcast that you've not yet had the opportunity to?
Eat your vegetables. They're good for you.
I do not sanction this message.
Yeah. Dogs and Gooses does not support that message.
The dog probably does. The goose?
Too silly for it?
Yeah, a little too silly for that.
Hey, that's why I'm the unofficial fan club.
And we support you in your views even if they're wrong.
Yep. Kind of.
That's true. We have limits.
Any other things you'd like to say before I ask you a question and then we close out?
No, I think I've said my piece.
All right, the question I have for you, Joseph, and I think I already know the answer to this, but are you a dirty dog or a silly goose? Well, and why?
After many, many nights of thinking of this, I have to go with silly goose.
We welcome you to the fold,
and
Joseph.
That's partially because before this podcast was even a thing, I have owned like 3 decorations right now. One of them is a set of red pillows on my couch. And then another of them is a picture of some ducks that hang above my bed that was from Egypt, and it's on papyrus. And another of them is a duck that hangs down from my car mirror. And so, with that much ducks in my lives, as well, pretty much all the decorations I own, I have to go with Silly Goose.
I respect that. Well said. And we of the Silly Goose world, with me as the president of the Silly Goose Society, welcome you with open arms into our fold.
We've only had one dirty dog in the show. I'm just waiting for some more. Joseph, I don't begrudge you for your choice, but...
Well, you chose the winning side. We're eventually going to have a civil war.
Well, you should invite Caleb on the podcast. I'm pretty sure he's a dirty dog.
Yeah, I'd classify Caleb as a dirty dog. All right, and with that, Joseph, would you say our motto?
Yeah, well, listen if you want, or don't. We don't really care. Have a good night, everyone!